And I know, so if you're a dupes person from Dallas there, raise your hand.
Yay.
Okay, so quite a few of you guys. Welcome, welcome. And I know Barry sent out a message to his peeps, so that's good. We're glad to have y'all here. And I think we had a new member join over the last month, but I don't think he's here. I think he's in Yellowstone or somewhere. He said he's not going to have any Wi-Fi. So Barry Klein. And Dennis, what's Barry's wife's name?
Barry Klein. He lives up in Eugene, Oregon, I think it is.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
My wife's name is Jody.
Jody. Okay, whoever. Oh, Martin. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll be seeing them in future meetings. And anybody else, a new visitor, first time attendee besides the Dukes people?
Yeah, I'm a new visitor. My name's Austin. Looking to get into photography, scuba diving. I'm relatively new scuba diver myself. I've got about 20 dives in. I dove in Florida and Bonaire. But yeah, I'm looking to develop that hobby. I'm completely new to photography as well, so I'm excited and just looking to learn.
Okay, and where do you live? Where are you?
I live in Irving.
Okay, so Dallas area. Well, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Obviously that's why we're here. We really all enjoy underwater photography and videography. And scuba diving in general. It's a great hobby.
You got another 50 years ahead of you.
Looking forward to it.
All right. So has anybody else been diving recently? I think it's Linda. Linda said she was in Cozumel recently, and the reefs were looking good. That's great to hear. Anybody else been out diving?
I just came back in 2 weeks in the Sea of Cortez.
Oh, well, good. How was that?
Oh, fantastic. We're on the Rosia Del Mar, liveaboard. A lot of life. Warmest was, I think, 88 degrees. Coldest was 73. And it could go from 88 to 73 in the blink of an eye if you got into an upwelling or a current. But it was fantastic. It was one of my bucket list trips.
And how full was the boat?
Pardon me?
How full was the boat? How many divers were on the boat?
We stayed out there 2 weeks, and it was full both weeks.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
we got on board. Everybody's wearing a mask, and the crew explained you could either dive or you could social distance, and the masks came off. So we dove, and we dove, and we dove.
Glad you had a good time. Anybody else? Oh, I guess I should introduce myself to all the people that don't know. My name is David Linderman. I'm the president of HUPS. I forget there's people on here that don't know me. So anyways, let's see. So no one else been diving? We got to work on that. That's terrible. I'm ready to go out there and go do something. If anybody's curious, I talked to Bayland Community Center where we typically hold our meetings. And I was just kind of asking if any other organizations are starting to meet in person again. And he basically said very few. He said very few. And so he wasn't surprised at all that we're still, doing meetings via Zoom and stuff. So I just a little worried about, if everybody else starts going back to meet in person and we don't, I don't want to lose our spot there, basically. So I'm just trying to keep a handle on that. So far we're good. Russell, do you have anything new to add about the British Virgin Islands? I'm assuming not much to report.
Really nothing else. I haven't talked to anybody recently. I was planning to talk to them the 1st of October just to see if, anybody's going down there and whether or not it's possible that we can go in the spring in May.
Oh, good. They're just talking their meetings.
Are you okay?
I think. Oh, how come?
Hey, Judy, turn your microphone off.
It just shows my name and not my picture like everybody else.
Oh, turn your microphone off and turn your camera on. It's down at the bottom where it says video.
Bottom left.
Bottom left. This is Judy Johnson. She's someone that her and her husband Don and I and Judy and Ruth, we dive a lot together, and she's held many positions with Dukes. So
yeah, I remember meeting Judy way back in the Sea Space days.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, there she is.
Absolutely, there she is.
Well, welcome, Judy, wherever you are. I don't see you, but
anyway,
Thanks.
as to your comment as to Bayland, you know, what we could do if we're afraid we're going to lose our room is maybe just 10 of us meet or something and do a Zoom from there.
I don't think there's an issue now, you know, and maybe after the new year starts and stuff, because, you know, obviously they want people to eventually come and have meetings there because that's how they get their funding, is the head count. And so I just, you know, was checking with him, and he told me flat out that, yeah, you're not missing anything. No one's really meeting in person. So
okay, that's great. And I'll have another report in October for the BVI trip that, you know, it's limited to 15 people. So I ought to know something by October. I hope I will by then, and I'll let everybody know that.
Okay. All right. And I don't see Kathy or the Mensays on here. I don't know what's going on with the Bonaire trip. I tried to look just an hour or two ago to see if Bonaire was open. Does anybody know if Bonaire opened up for Americans or not?
It's not open, and Continental's not even flying there until November.
Oh, really? Okay. Thanks, John. I forgot you're on that trip too. So I appreciate you being here and giving us the update. So you were on that trip, I guess is what I should have said.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's at least postponed so far.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for supplying that information. Betsy, just in time, just sat back down on the couch. Do you have an update for Huff and the video contest?
We have the 2021 date is April 17th and 18th. And that's going to be at 14 pews. We're just shifting all the tickets. And then we have, just in the last week, we have booked the Midtown Art and Theater Center in Houston for the 2022 HUPS, which will be the weekend of April 2nd and 3rd. And that's going to be a fabulous place to have the HUPS. They've got a big theater there that's state of the art, and I'm really looking forward to having our film festival there. It's going to be great.
Hey, Betsy, you might tell the HUPS people.
The only other thing I need to make sure people remember is that the fall video contest is coming right up, and the deadline to submit your 5-minute film is October 1st. And then we'll start voting on our Facebook group page through the entire month of October and show the films and announce the winners at the November meeting.
Hey, Betsy, why don't you expand a little bit on HUPS for the Dupes people?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. We need to tell what HUPS is for the Dallas folks.
Okay.
Yeah, stands for the Houston Underwater Film Festival. And gosh, I mean.
Okay, we had the show completely ready to show the weekend of April 18th and 19th. We were doing 3 shows, 3 2-hour shows, and all the tickets were sold. We were about to do our dress rehearsal, and then they closed the theater, and that was that. And we rescheduled the complete event because it was all ready to go for September 12th and 13th.
April.
Yeah,
September.
First reschedule.
For September.
Oh yeah, we did reschedule, but that didn't fly because.
And so then we had to abandon that because the theater is still not open, and so we have rescheduled once again for April of 2021. But we will eventually show all 3 of those shows, which are fabulous, and it's just such a shame we haven't been able to share them with everybody because they're just absolutely wonderful. Once we get past that, then we're going to start taking entries for the 2022 HUPS. So,
Hey, Betsy, how many different countries did we have represented?
I think it was like 26 different countries.
Yeah.
They're from everywhere. We had a lot of films submitted, almost 300 films. And we all went through them. Everybody that's on the committee watched every one of those films. And we, selected enough to do 2 2-hour shows, so 4 hours of films, basically. going to be shown. Yeah.
5 different categories.
Yes, 5 different categories. Help me remember what the categories are now.
We don't need to go into that, but I mean, the important part there was that as we got the entries in, we started to see that there were some really, really interesting movies that were made underwater, but they're not the kind of things that we typically think about. So we had sort of another category. The best way to put it is most of us make movies, it's an underwater film. These guys were like films, but they happened to have underwater stuff in them. So a difference in emphasis, totally different emphasis. So we opened up some new categories based on that, and that gave us sort of our 3rd show. So,
yeah, it was called the Art House Flicks.
Art House, yeah.
Hey, we might ask if anybody in the Dallas group is shooting video.
Oh yes, yeah, you bet. Is this where somebody could still enter the contest?
Not for this one because we closed it and got this program set, but the next one coming up, which will air in 2022, that one will open up for entries in the spring. Yeah.
Put a sign on your list for call for entries.
And by the way, so we had 2 other things that were kind of interesting about this. One was we had a novice category. So the whole idea behind this, this is for the Dukes people, the whole idea behind this was to try to expand interest in underwater videography. So we offered that, hey, we see a lot of people go out there with their GoPro and they think their footage is no good. But the main problem is they don't know how to process it, because it takes a lot of computing horsepower and there's a really big learning curve on processing video. So we said, hey, send us your clips, and we'll actually get one of the HUPS members to process your video for you. And sadly, we only had a few people take us up on that, but we did get some entries that way. And maybe that'll catch on, or maybe we'll drop it, I don't know. The other thing for you guys to remember is that we have a special category, which is called Made in Texas. So no matter what category you ended up entering your film in, if you were a Texas person, then there's separate awards for the best films made in Texas. And so anyway, we've had a lot of fun doing it, and it's going to go on for at least another year for sure. We know that.
If any of you Dukes people want to get information on HUF, the film festival, if you go to our club website, so hups.org, I think right there at the top it'll say HUF or film festival. I don't remember what the button is labeled as, but that will have the up-to-date information on the film festival
it's on the website
as it approaches. Yeah. I'm sorry, Betsy, what?
It's on the website up at the top. There's a banner across the top, and right now it says HUF 2020. So, but entries are closed for that. When we open entries again, we will put HUF 2022 up there, and people will have a link that they can go to enter the festival. There are no fees. It's completely free. We're not charging anything. We're simply making our money back that we spend to rent the theater by selling tickets for the event. So we're just, not charging anything at all.
All right, real good. Any other questions on HUF before we move on? No? Okay, thanks, Betsy. And all you videographer guys in HUPS, get your contest entries together and submit them, please, for October. I think that's it. Dennis, it's all you.
Well, it's all me. Well, it's actually Barry, but when we first got together, of course, we've been talking a lot about the sea space connection, and that's where I met Barry, and I think all of us knew them back in the 90s and 2000s when sea space was in its heyday. I had been aware of Barry. I've been following him on Facebook for years now, and I mean, he's quite an interesting guy. He's got a lot of accomplishments underwater, but he's also a very interesting person topside as well. So I thought maybe it would be a good idea to assemble a good introduction to everybody for Barry that covers the entire range of his talents and his accomplishments. And so I put together a pretty close to about 5-minute introduction. There's a lot of sea space stuff in there as well. I hope you like it, Barry. I heard that Ruth gave a thumbs up on it.
Oh, definitely. Thank you.
So Martin, if you want to run it, we'll see Barry in his finest here. Hope it turns out good. Tonight, Barry Guimbellot will be talking to us about using constant lighting for photography. In 2018, he and Marty Snyderman published an article on this technique in Dive Training magazine. But first, let's go back a few decades to the days of Sea Space, that much-missed dive show that had a great 38-year run until closing down after 2007. For much of this time, Barry and Ruth, along with a group of 10 to 18 Dallas underwater photographers, would make the trip down to Houston to participate in the photo contest, view the booths, and give workshops and seminars. Ken Kinesic ran a great show and recruited many of the world's finest underwater photographers as major presenters. The greats like Jim Church, Ernie Brooks, the Tackett's, Burt Jones, Maureen Shimlock, the Dreyfuls, Howard and Michelle Hall, and many others gave a special feel and importance to the show. HUPS always had a booth to discuss underwater photography and recruit members. But one of its main contributions was to assemble a large photo display. It took work from many members, but the end result was always stunning. An annual raffle that we held helped raise money for our treasury. Back in the early 90s, our president, Leonard Tchaikovsky, and Barry talked about the possibility of creating an underwater photo club in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Barry is not only the founder, but the sole president for life, going on 28 years now. His work with Dive Training and Dive Center business magazines has resulted in numerous articles and cover layouts, as shown here. In each issue, he and Ruth write and produce photography for bi-monthly columns. They also produce a very popular series of YouTube videos for scuba dive skills. Here are clips from several of these videos. He also worked with Underwater Kinetics, using their UV lights to demonstrate underwater fluorescence photography and videography. And of course, photography takes place above water too, and his imagination, skill, and creativity show up there as well. I've been following Barry on Facebook for years and know that he is also an accomplished artist with scratch art. He's what some would call a Renaissance man, one of many talents. So, now it's time to get back to what brings us here tonight, his underwater photography. without further ado, here's Barry.
Well, thank you, Dennis.
Very nice, Dennis.
Yeah, that was well done. I hope I can live up to it and keep everybody awake during the presentation tonight. If I may, I'm going to go ahead and get started, okay? What I'm going to be talking about tonight is how to use constant lighting for underwater photography. Obviously, we're going to be using that for video, but what I'm talking about is more for stills for tonight. And I'm not talking about the low lumen lights, and what I would call for a low lumen light is one that's less than 8,000 lumens. You really need 8,000 lumens or more to be able to get some nice stills and to be able to do everything that I'm going to be showing you that you're going to do tonight. And I do realize that constant lighting is not for everyone, but it's a tool. It's a tool to have in your toolbox so that you can use sometime. You don't have to use it all the time. Because there would be times like when you're shooting sea lions, for instance. I know Dan just got back from Blahoyak, just got back from shooting sea lions. Shooting something that fast, you're not going to be able to stop for a still image, but you're going to get, of course, some good video when you do it. The other thing is on sunny, bright days and Cayman clear waters or Cozumel clear waters, you're going to have to be real close to your subject to be able to get a nice photo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the equipment and then some of the advantages and disadvantages. We'll show a video of some of the images that I've taken using constant lighting. And then I'm actually going to get into the technique. You know, so this isn't just a sales job. I'm trying to get you to use constant lighting. Although I do sell big blue lights, but I promised the guys I wouldn't do a sales presentation, and I have no intention on doing that. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. Martin, you need to turn on screen sharing for me, please, sir.
Okay, that do it?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Here we go. Come on, slideshow from the beginning. Okay, underwater photography with constant lighting. I'm assuming y'all can see my presentation here. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just, I always like to check and make sure, you know, and everybody's looking at me talking underwater, and it's a lot better to look at Ruthie. All the pictures that you're going to see here were all taken using constant lighting. So this picture of Ruth underwater in a overhang, and I always say that she makes me look good. But if you've ever used a strobe and you've looked on the back of your camera and you see this because your settings were bad or your strobe was turned on, constant lighting is going to keep you from having that problem. Also, being overexposed with the incorrect settings. You're not going to be at f2 at a 60th of a second and two full power strobes. You're just not going to have that problem because of what you see is what you get. And this is the equipment that I use, the Big Blue, and they're 15,000 lumens each. And I'll show you one in just a moment in person. And the other lighting that I'm using will be for snoot style lighting. And instead of using a snoot on a strobe, I found it's much better and much easier to use a small constant light that has a narrow beam. And so this one has a 10-degree beam on it. LEDs are getting to be the thing in all kinds of photography. As a matter of fact, I've got a light just like this shining on me right now because I'm facing into a dark bookcase, and I figured you'd rather not see a silhouette all night. And these are the type of battery packs, which we'll go into a little bit later. They use lithium batteries, so you have to, there are some caveats you have to watch out for. And one thing that I do in carrying my batteries is I got a cool case like this, and this is a LipoGuard case, and that's for lithium polymer batteries like they use for drones or skateboards. These skateboards, not the right word. What's the little boards that they stand on and move along? And anyway,
Hoverboards.
Thank you, thank you.
I have kids.
But these are explosion proof and fireproof. And especially since we just had the problem with what we think was the problem with the ship last year in the Catalina Islands, we have to be more and more careful about what we do with our lithium batteries. So some of the cases will actually have a hole in the side of it so that you can put your charging cables through and zip it up. And so now, in case there is a problem with the lithium battery, if it explodes, the fire's going to go out quickly, and it's not going to go everywhere and burn the boat down. Now, when I say explosion proof, I don't mean like you could set a hand grenade in it, you know, but it'll certainly handle what a lithium battery will do. Excuse me. The key to shooting and getting the most number of good images with constant lighting is auto ISO. If you've never used auto ISO, you'll find it's a miraculous thing for cameras. What it is the camera sets the ISO based on the shutter speed and aperture you set. So what I'm saying is you're going to be using manual exposure, but with an auto ISO. So that's going to make things very easy. So if you can take pictures with a cell phone, you can take pictures using auto ISO with constant lighting. So with constant lighting, you can just kind of think of it as being available light, because what you see is what you get. In other words, like at the very first picture we looked at, when there was no exposure on the image at all, well, you're not going to have that problem when because you know that you forgot to turn your strobe on. So you're going to turn your strobe on. The way that the auto ISO works is in your camera, you set the lowest limit you want to use, which should be your lowest native ISO for your camera. Don't go into where it says low 1, low 2, low 3. I shoot Nikon, that's the way it says it there. But it might be ISO 100, ISO 64, something like that. Then you set also in your menu the highest ISO you will use. Now, how high? The way I like to think of it, if there was a humpback whale giving birth in front of you, would you be worrying about having an ISO of 200 and missing the shot? I don't think so. I would go for not as high as I always want to use, but as high as I would like to use, okay? So if you see something like that, you want to go ahead and get your ISO high. For a lot of people, that's kind of a hard concept to think, oh gosh, I'm going to be shooting over 100 or 200 or whatever. When you see these images that I'm going to be showing you later tonight, you'll understand how well that they do. Many cameras now have very clean images at 1500 and some at over 2500. Now, I know even my wife has one, but a lot of the Dupes members have the Olympus Tough series. And on that, I would say to keep the ISO at 400 or under. And the reason for that is because the images get too noisy when you get over 400. But those cameras use a much lower f-stop. They're shooting at f2, at f2.4, 2.8. So a lot less than what we would be shooting on our SLRs. The advantage, now you can shoot in continuous mode to get as many chances as you want to get the shot. So when I set my housing into, or my camera into my housing, I will set my camera on continuous low at 5 frames per second. I don't have to worry about my strobe recycling. I don't have to worry about having less light on picture number 3 or picture number 4. They're all going to have the same amount of light. They're all going to have the same exposure. Only the f-stop will be moving, I'm sorry, not f-stop, the ISO will be moving back and forth to get me my great exposure. Now still, you have to have a general knowledge of exposure settings. And if you do, every exposure will be within acceptable limits by using auto ISO. For instance, you're not going to be able to shoot at f29, 1/500th of a second at night or anytime with a shooting distance of 15 feet. It's just not going to work. So we do have to know what our limits are of our camera. So we do need to have some knowledge there. One thing, we can use auto exposure modes. Like for instance, on the Tough cameras, on the Olympus Tough cameras, they don't have a manual shooting mode, but you can put them in aperture priority and use the auto ISO, which even the Tough cameras have, and you can get a nice, decent exposure. You don't have strobe wires, and you don't have the problematic O-rings that are associated with strobe wires from those small O-rings that you have. The biggest advantage that you have is what you see is what you get. And that means if your light is not on your subject, you're going to know it immediately. If your strobe, if there's something in the way of your light between your subject, you're going to see that, and you're going to move your lights around where you're going to put your light where your subject is. They're lighter weight and size, so easier shipping. And I'm assuming, can everyone see me okay here? This is the strobe that I use. And this is one of the constant lights that I use. So you can tell there's a huge difference. So probably the volume of 2 of these strobes is the equivalent to 3 of the 15,000 lumen lights that I use. Some animals don't flinch as much as with strobes. If you've ever shot around a lot of anthias, you'll see how the anthias run back in, or swim, not run, swim back into the coral when you take a shot. Then they may come back out again, but it may take a few seconds for that to happen. Well, they don't mind as much when you're using the continuous light because they don't know if you're taking a picture or not. They just see the difference in the light. But we'll go over that with technique, how to get the light on them as well. They're not as expensive as strobes. You know, there's a lot of strobes out there now running $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 each. And then you're not having to buy strobe cords, and you're not having to buy backup strobe cords. So there's a lot of difference in the price. They are also smaller and easier to get into tight spots. So if you have a coral crevice you have something down inside, you'll be able to get your smaller lights in there much better. So by taking away the problems that you could have with trying to make sure you're getting the best exposure on each shot, and you're moving around and you're maybe a foot further back, your light exposure on your image remains the same because your ISO probably just increased as you moved back. So you spend more time on the art than worrying about technical issues. I have not shot a flash underwater in the last 3.5 years, and I have never looked back. I have gone with constant lighting totally. And then again, you can use, if you're taking video and stills at the same time. Now you saw in Dennis's presentation at the first of that I actually do the video for dive training as well. We have a YouTube channel and we show the skills in video. And then I have the stills that are actually in the paper part of the magazine. At one time, I would have to go through when I was using strobes, and I would have to cut out 2 frames every time I took a shot with the flash to make my videos look right. Now I don't have to worry about it. I can have my GoPro running on top of the camera and sit there and shoot my stills at the same time, no problem. Okay, which I just explained that. You can switch from video to stills real easily. Just change which, either if you have a second video camera like I do with the GoPro, or you can just change your settings and you don't have to really worry about changing your lighting. And because you can fire so quickly, you can really capture a lot of behavior. On a strobe, usually you can get maybe 3, maybe 4 shots, and then all of a sudden the strobe is having to recycle. Well, with continuous lighting, you can just sit there and just hammer the shutter and just take all the shots that you want to get to make sure that you're getting the shot that you want or the image that you want. Another advantage is there's no native camera sync speed limitation. So I can shoot up into the sun and have my camera at 1/8,000th of a second with no problem. Now it's going to be hard to light that 8,000th of a second, so I've got to have something really close in front of me, but I'm not going to have that bar that goes across the bottom of the frame because my sync speed is off, or I'm only going to be limited to 1/200th of a second or 1/250th of a second. The next thing is backscatter is not so evident because of motion blur. What is backscatter? Backscatter is reflected light off of a particle in the water. When you hit your flash and it hits that spot that's coming across, that trash in the water, that trash is still in your frame. It's in just one little spot and it records because it stays there the whole time. With backscatter moving across, then the light hits and the spot is not at the one particular area of your frame so long, so it doesn't record on the image as much. There's a lot of people that will take night photos using light painting techniques with a light, and somebody can actually walk all the way through the frame and you're not going to see them. Well, it's kind of the same process there, same idea. Now, there are disadvantages. You need to shoot at a higher ISO than with flash. So if it bothers you taking your camera off ISO 100, you're not going to do well with constant lighting. But again, the images look so good with most of today's cameras at higher ISO. You're going to see that it's not much of a problem. You have to use higher shutter speeds for moving subjects. And I suggest 1/200th of a second or faster. And the reason is because you're going to get motion blur. And that is, if you don't mind motion blur, if motion blur is part of your creative technique, that is wonderful. But if you're trying to stop a subject, you're going to need 1/200th of a second or faster. But with a flash, you could get away with a 1/30th of a second because you're balancing with the background, or 1/60th of a second. If you do have a moving subject, you should pan your camera with the moving subject. And if you're not familiar with the idea of panning, you take the picture, and as you take it, you're moving with your subject as you go across. Excuse me. And that keeps the subject movement less and gives you a sharper image. Video lights can scare some animals. They do. There are some animals that I get around and there's just no way. And animals have personality. Fish have personalities. I can be trying to shoot a particular butterfly fish in one area, and then come up on the same species a few minutes later and the fish just doesn't mind. So it just depends on the fish. And then of course you should shoot raw files for better processing. And I think that's pretty well done with most everyone now. Most everyone that I know is shooting raw files whenever possible, for lots of reasons, getting better color and sharpness and everything. You need more powerful lights and bright sunlight, just like I was talking about earlier. You can get away with bright sunlight if you're real close to your subject. But lights, even strobes, are supposed to be fill light. They're not supposed to be your only light in the scene. It's harder to shoot into the sun. You're shooting up into the sun, you're going to have to turn your shutter speed way up, which is not a problem. But if you have your shutter speed at 1/500th of a second, 1/1000th of a second, you're going to need to be close, very close to your foreground subject to be able to put enough light on them so that they will register. You can do it. It's as a matter of fact, it's hard with strobes, but it's just harder with video lights. And video lights can run out of batteries sooner than flashes. However, my big blues that I use typically run for about 2 hours on high, and that's continuous. But I don't run my lights continuous. I turn my lights on and off to save power. And that's why remote control is so great, and I'll show you about the remote in a moment. But when I come up on a scene and I think, yes, I think there's something here I want to shoot. And if Ruth's in the picture, I get her around and we get kind of set up. I turn my lights on, and then I take my images that I want to take. And then as I'm looking for my next photo opportunity, I'll turn my lights off. That way I've gone 3 dives without changing my batteries. And, you know, that's pretty close to what you can do with a flash. If you are using an aperture or shutter speed priority, you can, but I really don't suggest that you do that. I really suggest you're going to get better pictures out of shooting manual. But if you're intent on shooting shutter speed priority, that's for moving subjects. If you can hold your camera real steady with a slow moving target like a nudibranch, you can get away with 1/160th or even slower. But why? You really won't need it if you're shooting something close like a nudibranch. And the problem with using shutter speed priority is the f-stop is set by the camera, which means you could get a bad depth of field. You could have a f-stop of 2, 2.8, 4, and you're trying to get a picture of a nudibranch. Unless you have one of these very small sensor cameras like the Olympus Tough, which has like a 2x or more crop factor over full frame, then you're going to have a bad depth of field. Aperture priority then would be used for a better depth of field. I know the guys that are shooting with the Olympus Tough are going to have to use aperture priority because there is no manual priority available. So your depth of field is better, but your depth of field is going to be great on a wide angle lens. I will very, very often shoot f5, f4 with a super wide angle lens, but I've been using the last few years a Tokina 10-17, and now I'm using a Nikon 8-15. And so they're fisheyes, they're very wide angle lenses, and so you get a very great depth of field. And as I just said, depth of field is better on the crop sensors. And far more than we want to get into tonight, but there is a reason for that. Aperture priority is great for macro or close focus wide angle. That's when you're trying to get the most depth of field that you can. But again, you have the danger of having too slow a shutter speed. So you have to be cognizant. You have to look at what your shutter speed is, what your f-stop is, and know what your camera can do. Manual mode gives you the most control over your background lighting as well as your depth of field. You can set the shutter speed based on the movement of your subject. You set the aperture based on the desired depth of field. And then your camera sets the ISO based on the available light. Now, some people say, as a matter of fact, one of my friends just contacted me last night and said, well, what happens if you need to raise or lower the exposure and you want to do it as much in camera as possible? Well, adjustments can be made by using your exposure compensation settings, even when you have auto ISO. So your auto ISO is going to take into account your aperture, your shutter. It's also going to take into account whatever exposure compensation. So if you say underexpose this subject that you think this subject should be by 2 EVA, 2 f-stops. So the camera will then, what it thinks will be underexposing by 2 f-stops for you. So that's a way of getting that. Okay, so for macro photography, you want to have your lights on full power. One thing I like, especially about the lights that I use, is when they turn the lights on, they turn on at full power. I've heard that there's some lights that do not do that. You have to turn them on at quarter power, half power, 3/4 power, and then full power. So that takes some time, and that means your subject is moving around. And you may miss your shot. We already talked about using manual exposure mode. What I do is I point my lights down when turning them on. Because if you just point your light straight at any subject, and this is all the time, you point your light straight at any subject and you turn it on, it's a big flash. I mean, it's not normal for them, and it scares a lot of the fish. I found it's much better to point my lights down and then slowly bring my lights up. And the change is not so drastic to the animal, and it has less chance of scaring the animals away. And then, of course, you want your lights as close to your subject as possible, either directly above or on each side of your port. And that's going to give you the best depth of field that you can get, because you're going to be able to get a lot of light on there. I typically shoot my manual macro exposures at f22 to 29 at 1/400th of a second. And that's with continuous lighting. And then, like I say, I can just hit the shutter button, and for doing something that moves around real quick, an animal that moves around like an anemone fish, I'm going to get the look that I want and hopefully the image that I want without much blurring. Now, we talked earlier about a small size allowing you to get into crowded conditions. These are flamboyant cuttlefish. Several have not popped out of their egg yet, and one has. And if you've ever seen them, the cuttlefish like to lay their eggs on the inside of a coconut shell. So this is the inside of a coconut shell, which is not very big, and I'm able to get my lights in there just fine. You can see the reflection on the lower right egg, and you can see two definite spots there where both lights are coming in and giving me some pleasing lighting. Excuse me. Okay, now before you go to sleep, it's time for a video. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to share my screen in just a second. I'm sorry, I must have closed something out, but I'll be right with you.
Texans just scored.
Yep, and all of a sudden.
Hey, how was it? It must have been fun because you were there for a while.
Hello, guy. Well, I have gone brain dead. Where is my video? Which it should have been awake.
This is the part we realize that this is not a canned presentation.
Yeah, no kidding. This is live, folks.
I think we got plenty of time, Barry.
Oh, we doing okay? Good.
You're doing fine, yeah. Yeah, let's take a break while the Texans kick their extra point.
Yep. Texans ahead.
Oh, please don't tell me you've got football on in the background somewhere, Dennis. I'm so disappointed.
Well, of course I do. I multitask all the time.
Okay,
right.
Dennis, I'm recording this thing, so I don't want to hear any more, spoilers out of you.
What's the score, Dennis?
No spoilers.
Score.
Dennis, I really like the video.
Yeah, I'm good now.
Barry, you have my undivided attention regardless of them.
I am so glad. At least somebody hung with me, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, I'm going to have to share my screen again. Is everybody ready? Did they get their extra point?
Did.
All right.
Heard they were beating Dallas.
Uh-oh. Okay. Now I'll try to wake you back up again. Can y'all see that all right?
Yeah.
We can't hear it. You need to share the sound too.
Oh, look, it didn't come out?
Really, really low. There you go. Whoops.
Everybody needs to be very honored. Very, very seldom shares these pictures.
Good shot.
All right.
Hey, Barry, could I ask a question?
Please.
Okay, I noticed that you had a couple of, or several shots in there where you were doing basically snoot type, and that's with the 1200, is that right?
That is correct.
The 10 degree?
Yep.
Now, with the 10 degree, the 1200 lumen is probably putting out equivalent light in the area as your 6000s, is that correct?
15,000s.
Or 15,000?
Yeah, and yes, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go over the techniques for using the snoot lighting here next.
Okay, well, then I'll just.
No, that's okay. It's great to have some input. You know, it's certainly a different feeling and mindset of doing something here when I'm at home, you know, and y'all are elsewhere. So I appreciate the input. Okay, so now we're going to go more on the techniques of how I was doing those pictures. And all those pictures were done with constant lighting, every one of them. So it can be done. Yeah, you saw I took a picture up not directly into the sun, but just slightly off the sun with the dive boat at the end and had the crinoid lit up. So it can be done. It just takes a little work sometimes, but it takes work with a strobe a lot of times too. So as I mentioned earlier, excuse me, only turn on your lights when you need them. Saves your battery life. Also, it keeps from blinding the others around you. I took a group to a dive resort, and several of the people had constant lights, and they would just let their lights just hang, a couple of them hanging off of a cord with the lights on. And then when they'd swim by and the light would hit you in the face, you know, it was kind of startling. And then it keeps them scaring the fish so much. So you have to be cognizant of others, you know, when you do that. So as I mentioned earlier, I point my lights down, then bring them up slowly as I am getting ready to shoot. And that has two advantages. One, especially for the GoPro, because if I'm close to the reef and I point down first and I turn my GoPro on, the auto balance in the GoPro sets the right exposure. And as I bring it up, not exposure, white balance. And then when I bring it up, then I get a much better image than just say pointing the camera and GoPro up in the air and turning it on and then pointing it at my subject. And then, as I said earlier, it doesn't scare the fish as much. When you're shooting under a ledge, you want to turn the power down on your lights. I typically will use half power or quarter power because the fish that are under the ledge are there to stay out of the light. So they won't swim away so fast. If you just blast them with full power light, they're just going to slam themselves up to as far away as they can get or swim away. But if I come under with the lights at 1/4 or half power, they seem to not mind near as much. They're under there hiding. This is their time to snooze, and a lot of times, or just get away from other animals. So full power is not needed when you're shooting under a ledge like that. When you're shooting models, and I'm sad that Ruthie's not here tonight because she is the one that forced me by an arm lock to put this in there. No, not really. But there was a learning curve with shooting models because you have to instruct them ahead of time not to look directly into the lights. When you're shooting with a flash, they can be looking straight at the light, and then the flash hits, and yes, you're kind of blinded for a second. But when that light's on for a long time and you're looking into that light, they really get blinded. And so the other thing is I point my lights down to communicate with her or whomever you're working with, because the bright light, even though they're not looking at the light coming at them, produces a glare and they can't see. So Ruth will have me put my lights down and the camera down, and I'll make whatever hand signals I wanted to do. Then I bring my light back up, and then we can go. The only other thing is that when you're working with a model, they don't know when you're taking the picture. So they don't know when to breathe or breathe out and when not to. So that's more up to you. And I'm not saying hold your breath, but when you're taking a picture of a model, what you should do is take it as they're breathing in or right after they've breathed out. So you don't have all these bubbles in the face that look so shiny and bad. With a wide angle lens, you want to use your normal good lighting techniques, just like you would on a flash, same way. And I'll go over that in just a moment. With macro, you want to place your lights as close as you can on each side of your port. One light can go over the port. If you have 2 lights, that's okay. And you can have both lights shining down or even coming in from the side, just depending on your lighting technique. But the neat thing, both wide angle and macro, is being able to see where your light is pointing, where it's hitting. There have been times when I've brought my lights up to take a picture of Ruth, for instance, in Cozumel, on one of these large, beautiful reefscapes, walls coming down. And I'll see that I might need to turn one light facing more to the reef, and then the other one feathered across Ruth so that I get a good exposure. Okay, at night, many of the LEDs lights also have a red light setting for night diving. So, I mean, that's wonderful. That's one less light you need. So if you are shooting strobes, you have your 2 lights for your strobes, and then you have a red light so that you can see. Many LEDs, you can just hit a button and go from white to red. And that's a wonderful thing. And as a matter of fact, talking about this, this is the remote control that comes with some of the big blue lights. You can get it with or without the remote control. But for me, it's been a game changer, because no longer do I have to reach up and turn one light on and then reach up and turn the other light on. I can just, with the press of a button, I can turn both my lights on at the same time. They're fiber optic control. And then press the button again, it goes to half power, quarter power, and off. And then the other button's for red. So at night, I can have my red light on and just immediately touch the other button. Boom, I'm back at white. Boom, I touch back to the red again. I'm back at red and having a great night dive. Now, this is going to be a very shaky video, Ruth and I did this. It's only about 10 seconds long. This was our last dive in January of this year in Belize. And I said, oh, let's try this out because later on in the year, we'll make a good video of this. Well, then the virus came along. So excuse the quality of this, but you'll get to see what the lighting is like with the remote control. So there, Ruth pushes the light on, turns both lights on, pushes the one button, and pushes the button again, it turns off. And then we went to red. We had a horrible current that day. It was really silty, but at least it allows you to see how the red and the white can be used together for night diving. Also, ultraviolet filters can be added to the lights, and that can necessitate the need for having a white light or a red dive light, but otherwise you just have to take your filter off. And then if you are doing ultraviolet, not infrared, ultraviolet, to get the best effects, you're going to want a yellow camera filter, and that filters out the blue that's going to be showing.
Barry, I have another quick question.
Please do.
I have one big blue. I had two until I lost one. Do all of the floodlights for big blue come with the ability to be controlled remotely?
No. No, there's only a couple that actually have that feature. There's a 10,000 lumen, 15,000 lumen, 33,000, and there's a 60,000 lumen. Can you imagine? This thing is huge. It's like a coffee can. 60,000 lumen light. I don't think it has remote control, but as soon as the remote control came out, I sold my lights and got some others that can be controlled that way. For the ultraviolet, there's two options. Many of the smaller lights, like the 6500 lumen light, has a flip-up filter, and then you would not need another light for night diving because it also goes red. So you can go from red to white and then flip the filter down and you're fine. The one on the right is the 15,000, and it's a snap-on filter. So you could just snap it on and off, as you needed.
Now, the UV filter that you're using there is simply filtering out the visible light. So the amount of UV that you're getting out of those is not that much. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's pretty bright. I mean, it's going to depend on which light you have, of course. But, I mean, these pictures were taken with the light. So you got a bristle worm on the left, and that's called a naked brain coral from Australia. There is some filtering out, yes, and that just means you have to get closer. But
it's not, I don't think it's actually converting any of the visible light into ultraviolet. It's just simply taking away the visible.
And it's my guess, it's letting 495 nanometers come through. Yeah, and it's blocking everything below that or above that. It probably wouldn't block out everything below it. They don't give you the information on that, what the nanometers are. And as I mentioned earlier, you have to use good lighting practices. I saw a friend, this is with continuous lights, and I saw what he was doing. He was taking a picture of this clam, and I thought, oh, this would be a teaching experience for later to show him what he was doing wrong. So what I did is I went into Photoshop and I added lines to correspond to the coverage of what his light was doing. So this shows that he was lighting up all the water between his subject and his lens, which means he was getting lots and lots of backscatter. Now, I mentioned earlier that Ruth and I had gone to Cozumel right after Wilma hit, and this was like 3 months later, and sand was literally pouring off the reef. These two shots, these were strobe shots. This was before I got into continuous lighting. And the continuous lighting, the lights weren't powerful enough at this time. But these shots were taken 20 seconds apart. The picture on the left is with poor lighting technique. And the picture on the right was when I adjusted my lights to a better angle. This is the poor lighting technique that I used at first. And that was with a wide angle lens pointing both strobes straight ahead. And you can see how the light is lighting up the ruler in between my target. And that means everything that's getting lit is going to have the potential of being backscatter in my shot. All I did was to turn my lights to the outside, and now that reduced the amount of light on my ruler, which meant I reduced the amount of light on my subject. So if you figured that at the 3 foot mark on the ruler is where my camera was, I have a lot of area that I haven't lit. And so it really made that huge of a difference in just those 2 shots. So to show you some of the pictures that we did, you saw this one in the video and at the cover page of this. This was shot in manual priority, f5 at 1/200th of a second. And this is auto 450 ISO. And again, I know there's people that don't want to go over 100 ISO, but I would put this image even at full size, not going through zoom, against any of their pictures. And it's by good technique that you're going to get low noise.
You're using full frame, Barry?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so those are going to be low noise sensors anyway.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, low noise is going to be produced by underexposing. And that's where, when you have something that's really well lit, you're not going to have such bad noise. But so your noise really comes in things that are underexposed because your camera doesn't know what to put in those little pixel spots in between. So it says, okay, I'll put in a gray, I'll put in a red, I'll put in a blue, just because there's not enough data there. So when I expose, I try to expose to the right. This is Cozumel in bright sunlight. And again, just getting close to my subject. This is a macro shot with a 105. This little octopus is probably the size of a quarter. And I'm shooting at f14 for a greater depth of field, 1/200th of a second, which is pretty much where I'll be many times in the macro, and shooting at ISO 400. Again, this is auto. And f16, it just happened to be the setting that I had that day. It wasn't anything special where I had 16 one day and 14 the next. And here I used a faster shutter speed because I wanted to be sure and catch this little wrasse, this little cleaner wrasse. And this is at ISO 1600. So a good clean image as well. And again, if I'm not shooting these with a D200, that's a 15-year-old camera. You know, it's going to be the later, newer cameras that are going to give you the cleaner images like this. Stopping these little guys, those of y'all have shot the anemone fish know they come through. It was aerating its eggs. And so I used 3/20th of a second. And that's ISO 2000. So going to a snoot, we talked about that with the Big Blue 10 degree, and shooting with a snoot, I find it easier to handhold the snoot, and or if I have a snooted light or a low beam light, which is what the Big Blue is, and it keeps you from having to aim the light through the viewfinder. And that is, some people will place the light, lock it in with an arm on the housing, and then when you move the housing in and out, the light moves in and out, and your animal moves, and it's horrible. I tried to have Ruth light for me, and that worked some, but she didn't know what I was trying to light up at the same time. So I find it much easier for me to just aim my light over the head, and it gives me much more lighting options. Now, this is what I did. Got a little rubber nudibranch that I practice on, and I just rest my arm on one of my hand arm on one of my strobe arms, and just dangle it over the side, and then I can use my thumb and fingers to adjust the light wherever I need, and it works great. I mean, it is so much easier, even when you have something that's moving, but it's better to start with something that's not moving so much. And this is the light, we already saw it, but that again is the light that I was using. When you start, try shooting something that doesn't move so fast, like this stonefish. F13 at 250th of a second. Now, what I will do with the snoot is use manual ISO. And the reason for that is because the camera is going to try to light up all the area that the light did not hit. And then it's going to blow out the area where the light did hit. So anytime that you use a snoot, don't use auto ISO. I tried that and it does not work at all. Here is another one. This was shot at f25 at 1/25th of a second at ISO 500. So getting in close, and this is the same technique, getting in close like this, you're able to really get your numbers on up there. Same thing with this little guy, or big guy. And I was able to take 6 or 8 pictures and without him moving. As a matter of fact, I would take several pictures, and then I would point the light away from his eyes for just a moment, as if I wanted to kind of back my head up to see what was happening in my viewfinder, and then brought it back down, and he didn't seem to mind at all. Some, of course, you hit them with the light and they're just going to go away. Again, it's the personality of the animal that you're working with. Same thing here. Again, you can see I pretty well stay at ISO 500 and just work around with my shutter speed. I like this picture because you can still see a little bit of the anemone fish in the back, which tells a story, because these porcelain crab are on the side of these anemones, and usually there's anemone fish in there too. So I like the way that it told the story of the two. So there are some safety precautions. I really won't go through all these here kind of time-wise, but if you go on bigbluedivelights.com, they have this guideline that anyone can download. It's free, and it's simple guidelines for charging lithium-based batteries. You just got to be careful. We don't want any people having problems with them. There's all kinds of videos on YouTube where kids take their battery out of their cell phone or out of their laptop and poke it with a stick and watch it explode. I don't know. Not something I want to do. It creates a huge flash. And if you haven't seen one of these, you need to watch one and see what happens there. And that's my presentation. I hope I didn't put you guys to sleep.
Yeah, we've had a few.
Love it.
We've had a couple of incidents.
Thank you. Any questions? Dennis been asking some great questions. Anyone else have some?
Hey, Barry.
Yes.
Can you use different type of arms other than ultralights, which most of us use, or something like that? Like those flex arms that you use in smaller cameras with smaller strobes?
Yes, most definitely. Now, again, I'm just talking for Big Blue, but all the lights, not the little snooted light, but the regular video lights, all come with a 1-inch ball head. And so it's just like anything else. There is an adapter that we sell to use to connect the light to a flex arm. So that can be done too.
Those are the Unilock. I buy all of the Unilock stuff directly from the factory.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you just want to be sure you don't get the little bitty ones, but I guess you know that already.
Yeah, the 3/4 inch is what I use.
Yeah, those 1/2s just
half inch. Yeah, or half inch.
Barry.
Yes.
On your battery, how many times do you have to change your battery during the day? I mean, how many dives can you get on your batteries, or can you? Because I saw that you turn them off and you turn them on.
Right.
And so you're saving batteries there.
Right.
But they don't last as long as a strobe will.
Well, no. Continuous on, they'll run about 2 hours full power.
Really?
When you're turning them on and off, I can usually get about 3 dives, 3 macro dives, where I'm spending close to an hour. But of course, I'm not shooting the whole time. But the batteries that we have are not sealed in, so it takes 2 minutes to unscrew the back, stick in another battery, screw the back on.
So you're keeping.
You'll
Go
carry
ahead, Tom.
batteries.
I'm sorry.
You will carry extra batteries on the boat.
I usually don't, because if I can go 3 dives, I don't have the problem. I'm taking the back off of a Big Blue so I can show you what the battery looks like. So you just have an idea.
I was going to ask about that. It looks like it's about 5 or 6 18640s in there or something like that, is it?
7.
7.
Yeah. Yeah, so there it is.
Barry, I have a couple of Big Blues, but I don't have, my biggest one's 9,000, and you've got twice as big as that almost. So those are really, really large batteries, really large.
Yeah. Now I started off with the 8300s, and that was before the 9000s were out. Mm-hmm. And I believe they take a 4 battery pack. Isn't that right? They have 4 of these little 18 650s. And yeah, I mean, I did fine with it. I just wanted even more power because I was shooting so much wide angle. For dive training, I'm shooting people. I'm not shooting a pretty fish coming across in front. I'm shooting 2 divers. One's taking off a BC, or they're buddy breathing, or they're doing skills like that. So I'm typically further away from my subject than I would be when I'm just shooting for fun, like the images that you saw today.
So Barry, was it 2 15,000 lumens you're using?
Yeah.
So you got 30K.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Now, but it's 30K if both lights are hitting the same subject from the same angle. So when you're shooting wide angle and you're shooting out like this, you've just got a bigger spread of 15K.
Yeah. Yeah. I was confused because Because actually Betsy shot for about 2 years, maybe that way with two Archon lights. But so she had a total of 10,000, and I was thinking, well, she wasn't that far from your 15,000, but you're actually 30. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're shooting macro, you know, where
yeah, 10 wasn't enough. She can speak for herself. She's right. She demanded strobes at some point.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It depends on what kind of shooting you're doing, and the cleanliness of the images. You know, so I'm not trying to talk people into using it. I'm saying here's a tool that you can use, especially if you're doing like I am. You're shooting video, you're shooting stills. You know, I can just my GoPro's right above my housing. I shoot, and then I'll just come down and just shoot video as long as I want. And something I just can't live without, you know, I'll just raise it and start shooting stills again. So
I found that 7,600 lumens is enough for video, but I'm still having to go back in post and color correct because I'm getting too much blue light mixing in with the regular light from the video lights.
Okay, what video camera are you using?
I'm using the Olympus EM1 Mark II.
Okay.
Same one that Betsy and Craig are using.
Right. And then you're using big blue lights?
I'm using solos, but I also have a 4,000 lumen big blue.
Okay. It may just be that you just, and you're doing wide angle and you're getting a lot of blue?
Depends on how close I am, obviously.
Yeah.
Normally I'm a little bit closer to my stuff.
Right.
But I haven't done a lot of wide angle.
Okay. What it was just seeming like to me is maybe the sun is overpowering your light. You just don't have enough.
It is, no question. But then you can do some color correction in post.
Right, exactly. Just with that
just do white
resolve,
balance.
right?
That's it.
Hey Barry, just a comment. I think the point you made about the ISO is so important. It's something that's changed so much in recent years. I mean, a lot of the modern cameras now are ISO invariant over a very wide range.
Right.
But the key is you got to get the exposure right. If you have high ISO and you're underexposed, then you're doubly screwed.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, that's something that it kind of lives with us, the old guys like us from the film days. We just think automatically high ISO is going to be unacceptable high noise, but that's not true. If you shoot, like you said, ETR, I mean, it's quite amazing. Yes.
For any of y'all that didn't understand ETR, exposed to the right, that means in your histogram, you want everything, or most of your information is coming through on the brighter side of the histogram over to the right side. So you get cleaner images by doing that. Yeah, for sure. So that means getting in close to your subject. You know, I'm not shooting a 50mm lens and trying to shoot Ruth with someone else underwater. It'd just be too far back. You know, you're just not going to be able to pump the light in there. And that would be with a strobe too. But it is just made such a difference for me. It's just made it so easy. Again, for a beginner, as long as they know the basics, that you're, for instance, just like I said earlier, you're not going to shoot f/22 at a 500th of a second and be in a low light situation 10 feet from your subject. I don't care what light you're going to have. You know, it's just an underwater light. It's just not going to cover it.
Barry, I want to thank you so much. It's just been a great presentation. I've learned so much from you.
Oh, thank you.
And I feel like I'm always ahead of the curve because 6 or 7 years ago, I bought my first big blue and we were using what we called a focus light, which is what you're describing as your snoot.
Right.
And so there wasn't the kind of lumen power that you're talking about. The Big Blue, I bought the strongest Big Blue it was, and I want to say it was 2,300 lumens.
Right.
This was a long time ago. So it's really refreshing because I do a lot of video, but I want to get those stellar stills. And so I was trying to figure out, well, how many arms can you put on a camera?
Well, that was part of my problem too, because I was using I was using underwater kinetics lights.
Goodness knows.
And they're like 1,200 lumens, and I did some work for them, and I love the light. It's a little bitty light, but when the more powerful lights came out, you know, that's when I changed. But I made
But then you need 6 divers with lights for constant light for the one person that's shooting.
Yeah, I used 4 underwater kinetics lights and 2 acolyte strobes at the same time, and I thought, you know, this is ridiculous. What am I doing?
Yeah,
that's just basically exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Judy here. Barry got us started using the continuous lighting too, and I like to switch back and forth between video and stills, and it just makes it so easy. It's just really fun.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the background that behind Judy is one that she took with continuous light. I was on the trip with her.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't.
Of course, you can tell.
I don't know if I should thank you or not. I think this lecture cost me some money.
You and me both, Dennis. You and me both, Dennis. I got to go shopping now.
Well, talk to me before you buy.
Okay, can I have your phone number now?
Yeah,
I'll get it from, I'm joking, I'll get it from
Dennis.
Dennis.
Has it. Rich, did you have a question?
Yeah, what is the color temperature of the Big Blues? As far as
so glad you asked.
Warm side or cool side?
Cool. I'm so glad you asked. They're 6,500. So it's a little bit cool, but, and that brings up a whole new subject. There are the blue filters that even Big Blue sells that go over your lights in case you're using a red filter on your camera to equalize everything. But as a matter of fact, Judy's husband, Don, is the one that talked to me about this, and it made a lot of sense. And that is, if you have your doing video and your close light is, say, 4,500 Kelvin, so it's a warm light, and then your background, what color is that going to be where the flash doesn't hit? It's going to be real cold, right? It's going to be blue. So instead of trying to correct the warm in front to the cold in back, or the cold in back to the warm in front, why not have them both a little bit to the cool side? And it's much easier to balance the lighting that way. I find it's much easier because Don actually made some blue filters before Big Blue sold them. And we put them on the light, and we came up after the first dive and went, no, that sucked. So, but we're not using red filters on our camera either. But if you're using a red correction filter on your camera, you are going to need some kind of blue on your lights on the outside.
You can do a custom K if you want to as well. So you can correct a little bit for the extra blue just by doing custom color correction inside the camera.
You know, I tried that underwater with my Nikon, and it always says out of range. I just can't get a reading. I have tried several different times and just cannot get a reading on that. So I don't know what's going on. It may be user error.
Well, Barry, if I'm not mistaken, on the Big Blues, you can get warmer.
Yes.
Yes, some of them. Yeah, some of them you can.
There sure are. There is a new board. It's called COB. It's Circuit on Board is what that stands for. And it is a warmer light. It's a little more expensive, but not a whole lot. The burn time is less. And that was really the thing that got me. Instead of when I went with my remote control lights, the 15,000s, there's a 15,000 COB light as well. And the burn time was half an hour less. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll stay with what I have. And it's working. So, you know, I don't know if y'all saw any color problems with my images, but I just.
Well, the little filter that they provide on the 6500 Kelvin.
Right.
Kelvin? Yeah.
Yeah.
That will cut out a little bit of the warmth, so you won't be quite the same number of lumens as advertised.
Right. And I tried that as well, and I just didn't like the color it gave me. You know, I just like it better. Now I use auto white balance on my cameras too. And they're just nailing it. I mean, you know, I have to do a little adjustment, but not terribly.
Well, that's actually what prompted our question, because on Backscatter's recommendations for their constant lights, they're saying that it gets too yellow on macro subjects. So on close subjects, they felt that their lights were too yellow. And I never saw that on big blues at all. So
yeah, do you know the color? You know the color temperature their light has?
No, but I suspect it's probably much warmer than the big blues.
Which Ikelight's 48.
40, yeah, so that would give a more yellow color if it was 4800.
I'm pretty sure Backscatter, though, is talking about their solo lights. So
yeah, yeah.
Oh, solo, I have the two solos, 3800s, actually 3500, but they put out 38. And they are definitely around 4800.
Really?
Okay, so they're on the yellow side or warm side.
Yeah.
So that explains why they say that it's too warm.
Right. And of course, for stills shooting in RAW, that little amount is not going to make a huge difference, especially on a macro shot.
You just go back in and color correct it afterwards.
There you go.
I also like the fact that you've got those filters to work with as you shoot, because if you're on a twilight dive or a night dive, those filters can make the difference between a great shot or you're done, put a fork in you. So here's my question.
Which filters do you mean?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Which filters did you mean?
Well, I've used the red filter. I've used the yellow filter.
Okay. Right.
So my question is, how often do you find yourself using that yellow filter? Because I sure like it.
Never.
You don't? Okay.
There is no yellow filter. Well, yeah, you can buy a yellow filter for the 1500, but I don't use any filters.
Because my big blue came with the red filter and a yellow filter.
Right, and that was one of the old ones, right?
Oh, it's years and years ago. I don't even remember how long ago.
Now the red is just a double click away. You just double click the one button and it turns red.
Well, we were filming leatherback turtles on the beach laying eggs, so that red filter was essential.
Oh yes, yeah. They usually won't let you get around them without. People will not let you get around them without having red. That's
right. So it did double duty, and it was just a fabulous thing to shoot, especially mandarin fish mating. The red filter was great for that as well.
I haven't been able to do that.
Believe it or not, I've actually seen somebody, one of our members had a great video sequence of mating mandarins. And he was just using constant light.
Joe's in attendance tonight.
Joe is? Yeah.
There's waving.
I haven't seen him.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, he's right under.
There you are, Joe. Joe Haas. He's
hi, Joe.
Down at the bottom, page 1.
As a matter of fact, my background is those mating mandarin fish.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
There you are.
That's a great shot. I was wondering what that was because you're
Barry, that's not a shot. That's a video. He did a video, and that's a clip out of his video.
Wow, and they would still come up out of the coral.
I was like 4 feet away from him when he was getting that picture and his video, and it turned out perfect. They were not concerned at all.
Wow.
Actually,
I can't wait to get back in the water.
This is a still that I took before ones were mating, and then I took some more. I've got like 4 or 5 of them, stills, and about that many videos. And the videos and the stills too, for that matter, were only taken just with a modeling light.
Oh my goodness. Well, I just saw Leonard Chakowski show
Where
up.
is Leonard?
Here.
Hi,
Hey,
Leonard.
There you are.
I haven't seen you in an age.
Wow.
Can I say?
Is the
What can I say?
godfather of dupes. Did you hear that,
Hey,
Leonard?
Leonard, you missed your cameo.
Yeah.
You missed your cameo.
The class went over, you know how the first nights are.
Yeah.
Did you get the one that I sent to you?
Yeah, I'll get that and pull it up.
Okay, so you'll be able to see yourself.
Yeah.
And Marty Snyderman just joined. That must mean that the baseball game is over.
Where's Marty?
He's down there.
They'll play another one, Barry.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We're actually in the 9th inning, and I probably joined you in about the 5th.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I hope I didn't say anything too wrong.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, Marty has helped me a lot with the continuous lighting. As we talked about earlier, we wrote an article together a couple of years ago, and as I said, if he's doing Zoom training, so if you want 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 or whatever Zoom training, you couldn't get a better instructor. So we can get you hooked up there if you need. Just let me know. Was that a good enough plug? Was that worth the $20 you gave me this morning?
You got to earn it.
Well, Dennis, you think we should roll to the contest?
Yes, I think so. We need to get that done.
Ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okie doke. Let her rip.
It's interesting that the contest is on natural light. So we've been all over the place with lighting tonight.
Yeah. So this is if you don't have a light. What do you do?
Or when the strobe fails to run.
Strobe fails. Your battery runs dead. That's what this one's about. Yeah. Okay, let me share.
Come on, guys. Natural lighting is as natural as it gets.
Well, Craig is going to be, that's his next presentation for October. He's going to be giving a presentation on natural light.
Mainly for video, though, not for stills.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
thing.
Well,
Thanks, Martin. Good job, everybody. Congrats to the winners.
I'm not seeing a whole lot of difference between the novice up through the advanced. Looks like everybody's doing good.
Yeah, it continues to merge. That's good. Well, anybody else have something to say?
Nice to see everyone.
I agree. Be nice
Thank
if
you.
you're able to go to Jack's for dinner afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. I wanted
Great
to take,
presentation. Thanks for inviting us, Dallasites.
Yeah.
Sure,
I wanted
happy
to
to have
take-
you all anytime.
Thanks,
let me just
Barry,
take
thanks
just
so
a
much
quick
for the
minute
wonderful presentation.
to
I
tell
think everybody
everybody
learned a
how
lot.
much I appreciated you showing up from Dallas. This is the biggest
Thank
group that we've had.
Oh, good.
Good to have
Well,
you.
we've got a lot of loyal, good members.
You're welcome
I
to
think
attend.
that, I
any
think that
of
Dallas
our
ought to come to
messages.
every month's meeting.
Yay.
Yes.
Well, if we're invited, who knows?
Okay, just a FYI, usually we're the first Monday of the month.
Okay.
We have a special day this month for a number of reasons, but
Right.
typically we're the first Monday of the month. And if you look at the HUPS Facebook page, the link for the meeting should be there.
Oh, cool.
So put it on your calendars. How about that?
Dennis will send you all an invite.
Well, I
Yeah,
tell you, it's
we'll
great to
tell you.
see all you guys again. I mean, a lot of you, I know I've seen your faces at C-Space so many times. I started to wear my C-Space shirt tonight.
So Leonard, we're going to see you next month. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Why not?
All right.
There you go.
Let her go.
And Mark, you too.
Dallas, you're welcome to come and watch the video that David Linderman is putting on for Lunar Fins next Tuesday night.
Next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday. If you'll go to the Lunar Fins page on Facebook, you can see the post and the link.
It's actually
LUN.
a slideshow. Well, it's a slideshow, music sync slideshow. And then I'm doing a presentation on biodiversity, like comparing the Caribbean versus the Indo-Pacific.
Oh, wonderful.
So
Now,
kind
is
of
that,
motivator for people that have never been over to Indonesia or the Philippines.
oh, yeah. Is that L-U-N-A-R, lunar?
That's the moon, lunar fins.
LUNARFINS. It's actually NASA's Lunar Fins, NASA, Lunar Fins Dive Club on Facebook.
Okay, what time on Tuesday night?
6:30 is our general meeting, but the presentation starts at 7. We look forward to seeing David.
Yeah.
I hope you say the same afterwards.
Oh, welcome. So please come join us.
All
I think
right.
that
Mom, when
Martin
did you
is.
sneak in, honey?
Thanks. It's
I'm
really
quick.
great to see all you guys. You know, we used to see you at C-Space, and that was so much fun going down there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember those days, Judy.
Yeah, I loved your video you did of the intro for Barry and seeing all of the pictures from the olden days too. That was great.
Yeah, I saw me with a good
Judy.
team.
Judy, it was a pleasure to work with good. It's always good to have good material.
Yeah. Thank you.
Barry,
did
you're a
great
good
job.
teacher.
I'm sorry?
Thank you, Barry.
Oh,
You're a
you're
good
most
teacher.
welcome. Thank you.
Barry, you are a good teacher.
Thank you very much.
Very
Appreciate
clear.
Thank you very much, Barry.
it. All right.
Well, I'm going to sign off. Hopefully we'll
I
see
am
you
too.
again, maybe the first Monday of the month or next Tuesday for the Lunar Fins, if anybody's interested in that. But y'all
Yep.
take care.
All right.
I'll be there.
Be safe, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Come on, signing off.